Okay, we'll get started here in just a moment. Let me copy the link as per usual and get things started. Wait for some more people to come in. After the end of the fourth race of the season for the ISM Raceway, the Ticket Guardian 500, we are now waiting for the results from technical inspection. Ooh. Boop. Sharing that on here. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get going here in just a moment. We'll wait for some more people to come in here. Another Michael Mcdowell last place finish, it appears, at least at the moment, after the other storyline involving him this week, the fight with Daniel Suarez on pit road following the first round of qualifying. It turns out that he ended up finishing last in the race. So, hopefully we'll see if we get his last place article is going to get as much attention as everything else this week. Probably not. But, that's the way it shakes out sometimes. It was interesting just drafting the article here. I've been trying to kind of figure out the play-by-play of the fight. I'm not really a boxing expert or anything like that, so I'm trying to make sure I got the names of the maneuvers and everything mentioned in here correctly. So let me pull up everything here. Oh, let me switch the chat to the live chat so I can see everybody's stuff here. There we go. All righty. So Kyle Busch, unofficially your winner today at the ISM Raceway. His first win of the season. Martin Truex Jr. second, once again for the second time in since Atlanta, the second round of the season. Ryan Blaney looked like he had something going there. Fuel mileage and tires and everything else didn't quite shake out for him getting third at the finish. Almirola and Hamlin, your top five. But of course, that's not what we're covering here. No. We're covering the back of the field. 36 cars started the Cup Series race today. The shortest ever Cup Series field for a race at the Phoenix, now known as the ISM Raceway. Last year, they had 37 cars starting this event, and Corey LaJoie was last in that one. Michael Mcdowell, at least unofficially, pending the results of inspection, your last place finisher of the race today. Alex Bowman had issues after that, a couple of incidents with the wall. Ryan Preece, similar situation, two different incidents, getting him back into the 34th position. Landon Castle and Cody Ware rounding out your bottom five. And in the poll we had earlier, before the start of the race, two different series debuts during the race for both Quinn Huff and Bailey Curry. Huff ended up finishing ahead of Curry by one position and one lap in the results. At least the unofficial results shows Huff in the 30th position, completing 302 laps, and Bailey Curry completing 301 laps to finish 31st in the second Rick Ware racing entry. But both of them outside the bottom five, so it turned out to be a different scenario there. Let's check out everything here, and we'll get the timer out. As you can see, we're back at the regular last headquarters here. We tried something a little different in a different location here, but we're going to go ahead and do this from here. We are about it's about 19 minutes after the basically the when the race finished up there, so we're still in a holding pattern, waiting for what happened there at the track. Let us take a look. So we talked a lot last week about Kyle Busch's streak, and now that it's rapidly approaching that magic 200 number of 200 wins across the top three series, I pretty much made my piece on that. But we're certainly going to be hearing a lot more about it coming back at Fontana next week. And it wouldn't surprise me if Kyle's going to try to enter both races and give himself a shot of clinching it in the Xfinity race. So wouldn't that be appropriate the way it's going? Anthony Blaylock talking about the race today. Yeah, absolutely. But much better race than at Vegas. which is interesting because it seemed that not using the full-on aero package that they had there, using something closer to the Atlanta package, it was good to see them put on a good show for sure. I mean, the ISM Raceway is a track that it covered last year, last November for the website, and great amenities there. They put a lot of work into making that place really fan friendly, and on top of the reconfiguration of the track back in 2011. The Yeah, I don't think they use the aero ducts. I could be wrong about that. I thought that was just for the the mile and a half at the larger tracks. So I thought they had a different issue there for the different speedways. I'll have to look that up there on that. Yeah, I don't believe they did have the air ducts. It really stood out in Vegas, but we'll check that again there too. But yeah, a good race out there. A good, a very competitive track, and it seemed like there was a process there where they actually stepped up the broadcast and pulled the camera back. They took Brad Keselowski's advice from, I believe it was during the Vegas weekend, where he said, "Look, move the cameras back and actually see what's happening." Think of how much stuff you would have missed from this race here. Certainly, I mean, not just on the restarts, but during, the field stays bunched up enough because it's almost like the track is too small for the cars going around it. I mean, it's not a short track in the strictest sense. I got to go with Dale Jr.'s definition of what separates a short track from a speedway, from a super speedway, and so on. But they seem like they were at least taking steps to do something closer to maybe like what NBC does, where you have kind of some aerial cameras. The biggest issue I've always had with the broadcasts, and I mentioned this in another video a while back, was always those stationary cameras on the walls, where this is really a big issue at the plate tracks, where it would be between turns 1 and 2 at Daytona, and you would get a great shot of the cars coming into the corner, but then you would just go zip, 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 zip right in front of you, and then the camera moves and goes right by. And it's a great sensation of speed, but then they just overuse it. And during that whole time, you can't tell like if somebody's making a move or somebody's like working their way in line or something like that. And that's always something that really bugs me about that. And didn't seem to see as much of that here. So there is. I agree with you, Brother Flander. There's more that needs to be done to kind of emphasize these wider angles and make them more commonplace. But I think there are still steps in the right direction. It wasn't like some of these other races where they just zoom in on just 1 or 2 cars and that's just it. There was some of that, and the onboard cameras are now the thing that they need to really reel in. This got pointed out by somebody else online there during the race. A lot of times they switch over to an onboard, and it's like, why are they doing this? Like they show an onboard, and then the scope of that camera is so narrow you can't see what's happening. So different scenario there, but overall though, I mean, a step in the right direction. I mean, how much of it was the broadcast and how much of it was the actual package and the racing there? Probably more the racing, really, because I mean, again, they put on a good show over there at the track, and there's so much more you see that you don't. I mean, you can say this of any track. I mean, you're going to see more when you're actually there versus on the broadcast, because they can only show so much at the same time, and they kind of hold the rest of it hostage there. They're not showing everything else on the screen. But maybe they're going to be working ahead on that. So looking at the finishing results here from the Cup race, again, we're waiting to see if Michael Mcdowell is going to be officially the last place finisher of the race for his second last place run of the season, or certainly they're going to be looking pretty close at Kyle Busch's car there. Is this going to be very much like what happened in 1983 when Richard Petty was closing in on 200 Cup wins, 200 actual Cup wins, and had that penalty that it was incurred to him at Charlotte? We'll see what happens there. But 177 laps led, seemed to have the field absolutely covered. It was a little bizarre because the broadcasters seemed to even be falling into that, where they're just saying like, oh, nobody can stop him. Of course he's going to win the race. And, I mean, you can only do so much to sugarcoat like that everybody else has a chance at it. Like but at the same time, I guess there's a balance there a little bit. I think back to, I think it was 2007 where Kurt Busch led like 175 of 200 laps at Pocono. And then they said Denny Hamlin had the fastest car on the track in second. And it's like, okay, well, that may be true, but he's not getting the lead and he didn't win the race. And so, something can be true, but not accurate. So, You can have a fast car, but I mean, they're going to get up there. Who knows? I mean, certainly, certainly a different scenario there. Good to see Kurt Busch still having a really good, strong start to the season. Seventh place finish in this one. Was flirting with the top 5 there for a while. So another good run going after getting his first top 5 in years last week at Las Vegas, for that track specifically. Johnson's up there. Boyer was really good for the middle stages of the race. Chris Buescher got back from losing a lap, ended up 16th spot there, completing all the laps. Final car to finish on the lead lap unofficially. The back of the field turned out to have a lot bigger names than usual, and that's always the interesting thing with covering this end of the field is you have sometimes it's not always like just addressing is it always going to be Rick Ware's team? Is it always going to be Spire Motorsports or anything like that? No, absolutely not. And today is a great example of that. Not only was it ultimately a Front Row Motorsports car that was last, but the other 2 big contenders were certainly Eric Jones with the issue that he had after the right rear went down and did some real damage to the suspension there. He seemed like he was really struggling getting around there. He had some issues there, but also it looked like for a while that Brad Keselowski was going to slip back down there too. I kept hearing over the radio that they were going to take the car into the garage and they were going to do that, but somehow, I mean, again, Penske Racing seems to be, they can't do anything wrong at this point. They took that 2-minute pit stop that was mentioned on there after getting the lucky dog, and they lost almost 2 laps of the process, but they didn't have to go to the garage, and they got whatever they were working on done and got him back out there. And ultimately, Keselowski where did he finish? 19th unofficially. So good run for them and a good hustle there. Matt Tifft in the 20th spot. This was like, I don't know if that's his best finish of the year, but it certainly feels that way. Actually he was up a bit higher than that, about 18th spot there, midway through the 3rd stage. So that was good to see. But yep, exactly. Yeah, McDowell takes the early last car lead, and also as pointed out by another reader there, I believe DNF Racers pointed this out, that he now ties the late JD McDuffie right here with 32 last place finishes in the Cup Series. But it's not the overall lead because Joe Nemechek's 33 are still the lead in the Cup Series right now. But again, unofficially, still waiting for the results from inspection. So looking at everything else here, we're just waiting to see what's going on. Let me keep another tab open here, and then we'll kind of go over what was going on in the Xfinity Series race as well. And there you are. So again, Kyle Busch winning yet again in that race as well, based on cruise control, driving the same car that Jeffrey Earnhardt ran earlier this year, leading 116 of 200 laps to take the win over Ryan Truex. But at the back of the field, then we have the same issue that happened with Bailey Curry. Curry having, this was not a start and park situation by any means. They actually got sponsorship on Rick Ware's Xfinity car for the first time this year. The Port of Tucson bought pretty much every corner on that car. They didn't have a paint scheme per se, but they had the logos on the hood and the quarter panels and the TV panel there from the replays, and were able to get some attention that way. Unfortunately, the race didn't end the way that they wanted to, finishing 37th in the first short field for the Xfinity Series this year. Still, I mean, Curry, then, that wasn't the end of his weekend, of course, as I mentioned. Him being able to make his Cup Series debut, it seemed like both him and Quinn Huff were really, taking efforts to actually kind of stay out of everybody's way. And when you're starting out in Cup, and I would imagine, with the increased horsepower and the different drivers you're competing against, that's the best you can hope for is, just try to run as many of the laps as you can, keep the car in one piece, and don't, wreck anybody else out of it. And that's pretty much a successful day. It's almost kind of a throwback really to what rookies would really do, back in the day. I mean, now I think we're still in that era where we expect a rookie like when Eric Jones came in or some of these other competitors, that we expect them to win out of the box. And it's really only recently, there were, so many of them after Tony Stewart came into the circuit, and then you had Dale Jr. and Matt Kenseth and Kevin Harvick after that, and Kurt Busch. You got used to these people actually being contenders pretty quick. But people further back like Davey Allison were really the exceptions to that rule. But again, good to see Curry and Huff get their first Cup starts out of the way. Curry in particular, I mentioned this. I'm getting the Xfinity article finished up there on him. The ISM Raceway was actually the scene of his first top 10 in NASCAR's top 3 series. He finished 10th in the truck race, I believe, in 2017, driving for DJ Kopp. And DJ Kopp is actually the one now that's fielding Mike Mittler's number 63 in the truck series. Got a good finish there, so it was a good track for him to start out in, and didn't finish last in the Cup race. I was wondering if this was going to be like last week, where I was going to have to merge the Cup and the Xfinity articles into one thing, but at least unofficially, it looks like that's not going to be the case. Looking further up the rankings here, a lot of great runs for small teams. I mean, first of all, I mean you have to start looking at RSS Racing and Ryan Sieg. Josh Bilicki and Jeff Green, again, helping out that program. But another 10th place finish for Ryan. I believe they say that they've already matched their season total for top 10s that they've had for the last couple of years just in these first 4. So an incredible start to them. Looking further back, the two I'm continuing to be amazed by, just like these last couple of weeks, are Brandon Brown and that number 86, even without any real sponsorship and not much press or anything like that. These were guys just ran on a part-time basis before. They are really making believers out of me, because they've had, what was it? They were 15th at Phoenix, and I believe, what was the streak there? Yes, they've never finished worse than 18th in the first 4 races this year. 18th at Daytona, 13th at Atlanta, 17th at Vegas, and 15th at Phoenix. That's really good. I mean, even though they've really clamped down on the Cup Series drivers, and you have fewer Cup Series teams in that, to consistently perform at that level, I mean, and again, with not that much sponsorship there, very impressive. So good to see, and hopefully they can carry that into Fontana and beyond. And again, the other one I have to mention, like I mentioned last week, Gray Galding in the 08. They had trouble at Daytona, even though they qualified 5th, had a pit road incident, and ended up being a race where not much happened, and that was enough for them to finish 34th in the race. But in the 3 races since then, 16th at Atlanta, 12th at Las Vegas, and 16th again at Phoenix. So great run for Bobby Daughter and the SS Greenlight Racing team. It's especially significant, I'm sure, for Daughter, since it's running the 08 that Daughter himself ran in the Xfinity Series way back when. So really good to see for both those teams. And those are the kind of things that I would hope would bring a lot more attention to the Xfinity Series and get people really excited about that. Yes, and asking about what happened with Curry's car. Yeah, I believe it was they had an issue with the if it was what was it? It was an oil line. I think that was because it was very similar to what happened to Cody Ware in Cup Series practice last year at the ISM Raceway, that they had fluid on the tire going into what is now turn number 3. I have to always map that out in my mind, just like the spotters. But what is now turn number 3, going in there, get some oil on the tires, put the car on the wall, and then ended up taking him out of the race. I remember when Rick was looking under the hood of the 51 last year and just pointing, I was like, look, there it is. And they didn't have a backup car. And fortunately, they were able to work something out with Premium Motorsports to keep their car in the race, keep their sponsors out there. And that worked out really well. Teams helping each other. Unfortunately, it looks like that car got beat up pretty bad there for the Xfinity race. I mean, we'll see if they run next week. We get the entry list and everything. I don't know how many other Xfinity cars the Ware team has on hand. It seems like they're focusing more of their intention on their Cup Series program, but we'll see what happens going forward on that. And yeah, the unusual incident with Stephen Light. Stephen Light being your last place finisher of the Daytona opener in the Xfinity Series. The car blows up going into that same corner, which has suddenly become the most treacherous one at Phoenix, going into turn number 3, and causing a big smoke storm, collecting a couple of the top contenders there of the week. And it's unfortunate that shook out the way that it did. But really, again, we'll see what happens at Fontana this week. Closing out the West Coast swing, I would anticipate they'd probably keep the entry list about the same, which on the one hand would be unfortunate because, again, this was the first on the Cup side, the first 36 car field that we've had where it's just the chartered teams, none of the open teams out there, even though some of the teams that are open, that are chartered teams this year, were open teams in the past that were able to pick up charters, like the 52 was last year, and things of that nature. But we'll see what happens. Yeah, so Rick will see you bring up Brandon Brown running a Cup race this year. I mean, at this point, yeah, why not? I don't know if maybe he picks up something with Ware or one of these other, maybe Spire Motorsports, if you can get a sponsor going. Of course, again, the sponsorship seems to still be the issue with the 86 right now, so we'll see what happens on that. Any updates on the motor for the 66 at Fontana? Nothing that I've heard so far. The Facebook page that Carl Long's team has had is usually the best resource for that. Let me check that again here while I'm waiting online here. I'm just seeing Linda McDuffie has reposted the picture of her father at Watkins Glen on August 11th, 1991. That was that shot from the book there. Here you can see it on the screen right there. So that was always an amazing picture there between J.D. Marcus and Richard Petty there. Let me look at the Carl Long Motorsports page and see if there's anything new on that. That was, again, for those of you that weren't in here for the Las Vegas show, that was the thing that we were talking about. I'm sure some of you have no doubt heard. I was listening into the communications with the 66 team, and they were really concerned about the engine that they had when it was turning sour for Joey Gase, so he shut it down to prevent any damage to it. Apparently their engine tuner was still back at the hotel in Vegas, and he wasn't at the track for the start of it. By the time he came there were so many laps down that they just pretty much just packed up. But they did say that they were going to run the car at Fontana with the Vegas Donate Life sponsorship arrangement. So it should be like the exact same paint scheme, and hopefully with the same engine. I imagine they're not able to travel all the way back to North Carolina and then bring something back to Fontana. As far as I know, they're still on board for that. But if they withdraw, that would be really the case. That would be because the engine is just not ready. But I don't have any new inside information on that at the moment. And I'm not seeing anything new really on Carl Long's page here either. So let me take a look. Yeah, 37 cars likely for Fontana, maybe 38. We'll see what happens with the Gaunt Brothers team. I mean, that's kind of the interesting one. I know that we talked about that a little bit last week, seeing what them and Parker Kligerman can do going forward. It's really good seeing, I mean, again, any open team that's out there. I mean, it must be that those open teams are just not getting any real sizable amount of the purse for any of these races, because you have all these open spots, and you would think people could just get some kind of car together, or maybe coordinate an effort where maybe it's kind of like what Premium Motorsports has done. It seems like they're almost like the car dealer for a lot of these other race car teams, and getting black Chevrolets out there that are from Jay Robinson stables over at Spire Motorsports, or the second Germain car, or things like that. We'll see what happens. Yeah, Texas is a possibility. Certainly is. Certainly a track that's not very that's really hard on engines, even after the reconfiguration. But no harder than Las Vegas certainly was. So we'll see what happens. What happens going there. Yeah, looking at some other runs here. Ray Black Jr. and the other Bobby Dotter-owned car got 18th. Chad Fincham 19th, and Tyler Hill in 20th. And this is the interesting thing, again, mentioning with Carl Long's team, Chad Fincham, Tyler Hill, and let's see. Let me confirm this right here. I don't know if Fincham had a Supra this week. I don't believe he did, but I know that Gase and Hill and the 13 of Stan Mullis, they were all running old Toyota Camrys. I don't remember if the 42 was a Supra. I know it had been in the past. I'm gonna have to look that up there. It'd be interesting if that was in the official results. Of course, you look on this now and it just says, Toyotas, and that's it. It's amazing to me how few Fords are left in the Xfinity series after the Roush deal collapsed there. You just see those three. I mean, they're fast. I mean, you got your Penske one, you got your Biaggi one, you got your Stewart Haas one, but that's really about it. They're not even being picked up by a lot of these smaller programs here. Taking a look elsewhere on here. Yeah, Yeah, that's right. They withdrew the car at Texas last year. I mean, that was a big issue with the sealed engine issue, if I remember correctly. That was the Martinsville thing that really skunked that. Like they had a car presented and ready to enter, but then what was it that they had to run like a sealed engine and they didn't have it anymore because the engine fire or something else blew up in another race. It was an unfortunate set of circumstances, but we'll see what happens on that in the future races there. Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, that's right. The Donate Life paint scheme there. Mike Harmon, good finish for him, 25th. Speaking of which, I really like that picture again. Check out my Twitter feed if you haven't seen that at Last Car on Brock. It's a great picture of a lot of these underdogs that you see in the sport standing together. Was it Morgan Shepherd, Tommy Joe Martins, BJ McLeod, and who was the other one? Shepherd, Harmon, Martins, and McLeod. I think that was it. There was just those four guys, but that was perfect. I haven't, really, again, a lot of these people are just great personalities and interesting people and eager to talk with people. That's always the most interesting thing. They almost sometimes they thank you for talking to them, which is really humbling at that point. It's like you really realize how much these guys want to get their names out there, just like anybody else. And maybe they don't have the fastest car or the biggest sponsor or anything like that, but as we've seen with Matt DiBenedetto and other competitors, even nowadays, there's a path to get up there. It may be a lot steeper and there's a lot more obstacles you got to jump through, but that path is still there. So it's good to see. Still holding out hope that Jeff Green can get some more sponsorship too. I know that he's been particularly fast in qualifying in these last few rounds. He was 23rd in qualifying along with Bailey Curry. And that was only because the two of them didn't turn a lap in the second round. I'm sure if they had sponsorship, extra tires and all that, they would have been able to, at least pick up a couple of positions, or, even if they, weren't that far off from it, if they just held those spots there, that would be good. But, unfortunately, these are decisions you have to make when you don't quite have, all the resources that some of the other programs have. But bottom five for the Xfinity race, Bailey Curry in last place, 37th place finish because of the crash over in turns 3 and 4, just started short of the finish line. Stan Mullis, the number 13, spent several laps behind the wall. A carburetor issue took out the number 13, sponsored by Street Toys and LasVegas.net. So we got some good sponsorship from local brands on there. And interesting, and again, much like what happened with the 66, it was like stuff that carried over from Las Vegas into Phoenix there. Diamond Gusset Jeans on the number 99, Tommy Joe Martins. Car just shut down at one point there. Fuel pump issues eliminated him. Morgan Shepherd completed 56 laps before brake issues. Big thing I'm noticing this year compared to last year, it looks like Shepherd is running more laps in each of his starts than he had last year. And then again, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, you could pick up a lot of positions if you have a big wreck at the start of the race or something and turn out with a good finish. I believe at Indianapolis last year, he had a really good showing there, just by running a few more laps. And Jeff Green rounding out the bottom five there in 33rd position of the 37 car field. Vibration after 59 laps, just a couple laps before Ronnie Bassett Jr. fell out of his series debut. Again, Green still hasn't finished last this year. I believe his most recent one was actually Phoenix last fall, if I remember correctly. So, different set of circumstances for him. Maybe that's a sign that, they got some stuff going there. I don't know the exact exchange about how they determine who's going to pull into the garage first. I'm sure different teams have different strategies on how they handle that. But, certainly want to preserve your car as many races as possible. We saw what the results of that on the other end is, what happened to Morgan Shepherd last year at Texas. His hard practice crash there, and thankfully the JD Motorsports, Johnny Davis people were able to help him get his backup car set up to go, and he was able to run at Phoenix there, even though he was still just flogging on that car, even in the garage area right when they opened up. It was still a really tight schedule they were working on to get that 89 out there, but they did do so. And perhaps it's another reason that they're still competing right now. But yeah, really like the Phoenix track, really like the aero package and everything and how it's been working here. Morgan Shepherd led a lap or two at Darlington last year. Again, it's interesting to see with that. I mean, old Shepherd running into, I mentioned this before. I ran into him in 2017, and he was staying out to lead. And of course, there was the stage races just like there was last year. And I was asking him why he stayed out to lead a lap or so there when there was really there's no bonus points in for it and anything like that. And he said, "Look, I'm like 76 years old, and I led a lap at Darlington." He just left it at that. I mean, just the coolest guy. I mean, when you talk to him, you really understand why he's still out there. I know that, and again, I'm used to hearing about this with JD and some other independents in the sport. I mean, that's always the thing that gets thrown around is why are these guys still out there? Why are they out there? And it's always, I never understood that point of view because it's like, well, what are they? They're not taking away something from somebody else. They're not hogging the limelight for somebody else or anything. They're just trying to make ends meet. I mean, there's no difference between, that and the corner store that's open downtown while a Walmart is being built like across town. It's the same thing, and you have the ability to compete, even if it's long odds or anything like that. There's always a possibility that you can offer something unique through your talents, and that's again an aspect of NASCAR that I've always enjoyed. Shepard reminds me of Dave Marcus. Perfect comparison. These ageless competitors that are defined so much by, I wouldn't say really eccentricities, but just like unique things that just make them unique. Things that really define their passion. If you think of Marcus, you think of the Goodyear hat with the Chevy pin and the wingtip shoes. And the big glasses. When you think of Morgan Shepherd, you certainly think of his faith and being a born-again Christian and how that has driven his life and his charities. The Scene Vault podcast goes into that really well. I believe their holiday episode talked about their annual meeting and all the people that are a big part of that. But yeah, Shepherd, class act all the way, and we'll see how many more races he goes and well, after doing 50 years in the sport and celebrating that, I mean, he's already saying, well, I'm getting ready for the next 50. So that's the kind of person. I mean, I'm just trying to think like what it would be like if you had a driver these days that would fit into that mold, that would be around for that long. What would that even look like? Like, what would an aged Joey Logano look like, or Brad Keselowski, or something like that? I guess it would look like Bob Keselowski. I mean, Bob had been in the sport for so long himself, so you have that. But yeah, exactly. And just look at your comments there, Beast of Metal. Exactly. I mean, you got different different small teams, and they really add the flavor to the garage area. I mean, you don't want to always have the same people every week or just the big names and that's it. I mean whenever I go to the garage area at one of these races, first thing I'm gonna do is go to the far end of it. Even as a fan, like years ago, the Sears Point Raceway always had that big garage building that you can see from the broadcast, that really long one that was built when Infineon became the title sponsor, and they redesigned the infield. That pretty much has all the big teams. And then there was a smaller garage around the corner. I did a video on this in 2010 where they just had the overflow. Like if there's like extra teams, like back when you had like 46 people for 43 spots or something, they would all be crammed over here. And those are always the really interesting teams. And there was a walkway that goes to the Raceway Cafe that's over near Turn 11. And that walkway would always go right past that building. So you could actually get really close to where those cars are. And that was always a great thing. Even further back, I remember seeing Hideo Fukuyama's car there in 2003, or Jim Engelbright. And then much later on, you look at Brandon Ash, Dave Blaney, when he was driving for Prism Motorsports. Some of these other guys, Michael Waltrip, when he drove like what was it, like the Fan Vision paint scheme, the one that was on, it wasn't the Baby Seals one that Kyle Busch ran in the Xfinity series, but something similar to that. But yeah, always an interesting thing. And those are always the ones that you don't see them on TV, and there's not even in social media, sometimes you can't find a good picture of them and anything like that. So it's almost like buried treasure there. You really want to know what the thing looks like, and you want to look for it out there on the track. So that's always the stuff that interests me on that. Yeah. Oh yeah. I just noticed your comment there, Anthony, about the time change. Yeah, believe me, I'm with you there. I actually worked, like I say, for those of you who don't know, I actually worked night shift here on the side, and it's always the time changes are always the most interesting times of the year for sure. And when it springs ahead, it's like you see the light coming outside, and it's like, well, that seems a little too early for that or something. And then you have some clocks that change, some that don't. It's so easy to try to set it ahead and then just feel weird when you wake up in the morning. It's another thing when you're like there and you're especially with the work that I do, it's very much time sensitive. So there's a lot of things that some things are timed for this amount, some things are timed for that amount, and so it's always a different deal there. Oh, curious what my day job is? Yeah, what I do actually is I register patients in the emergency room at a inner city hospital that's a ways away. And what we do basically is, I know when you usually see like hospitals on TV, they always have they always show like the nurses like collect insurance information, make copies of it, stuff like that. In an emergency room, or especially when it's like really busy, you need to have like purposeful administrative employees there in order to like get that information together. So that's really the long and short of it there. Yeah, I mean, really interesting work. I'll tell you that. Really interesting work, great people there, and everything like that. So that's always interesting. And I think actually, and this is actually kind of a good roundabout way to kind of tie this in with everything with the website. I always feel that the experience from working there is it kind of helps me with like approaching the interviews with with some of these last place finishers in the garage area. I mean, there's certainly it's important to have the compassion to handle it in the appropriate way, but also make sure that you're asking the questions that need to be asked. And it's a delicate balance, and I'm still figuring that out myself. Actually, Tommy Joe Martins was tweeting me just this morning about the interview I had with him at Watkins Glen last year after he had a really scary accident there, exiting the short chute there, and plowed up the wall there. I mean, how you approach a situation where somebody is either just really upset, just having the worst day that they can have, or is just freaked out about something like that. How do you approach that? And there's no perfect answer for that, but I feel like I get a lot of practice that from my day job, and I feel that has informed my work in that, and hopefully it's coming across there too. In Tommy's case, I mean, that car was just absolutely destroyed after he hit the wall. I mean, the picture is actually on my Patreon page, and some other sorts there too. But doing night shift is always interesting, and but there is like a tie-in there. A hospital is almost like a garage area for people in kind of a sense there. I mean, it's not that impersonal, of course, but there's similar strategies you have to employ. So I feel like there's a lot of crossover there. The fight in qualifying. Let's talk about that. In other news, Michael Mcdowell and Daniel Suarez in the fight during qualifying after they had the tangle there during the race. I mean, how many times have we talked about the 1979 Daytona 500? How many times have we talked about, or as my brother always calls it, two grown men fighting over a wrecked Oldsmobile? That's always the way he puts it. He finds the most blunt way to sum up something. That's the way he always calls it that. Now we have Michael McDowell and Daniel Suarez, who, for all intents and purposes, I only spoke to McDowell. I haven't spoken to Suarez, so I don't have any experience really with talking with him. But McDowell is very mellow, very laid back. He introduces himself like he's just he's like, hey, I'm Michael, who are you, and all that, and then it's like shaking your hand and stuff like that. I mentioned this on Twitter originally. It reminded me so much of Lake Speed and Michael Waltrip tangling at I believe it was Charlotte years ago. There's just out of nowhere, like they both pull down pit road, and then like Michael gets out and like starts looking at Lake. It's just such weird stuff there. It's there, and of course, we see the consequences when you don't see stuff like that. Then people, start turning the cars into weapons, and you have something that's like the Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano thing. You start having things like the Brad Keselowski, Carl Edwards thing, and then sometimes those things can escalate. Or even Kurt Busch and Jimmy Spencer is a perfect example. There's one that had kind of elements of both, and then ultimately culminated in an actual hand-to-hand thing going on there. So yeah, an interesting thing there. But I'm kind of with Junior on what he was posting on the social media originally, that they had a meeting with NASCAR. Okay, absolutely. But was there like warnings or like telling them not to do that or anything like that? Probably not. Like they're probably just, if anything else, they're probably just sitting there and just saying like, hey, let's just see what transpires there. And then absolute perfection that both of them had to be in the same truck for driver introductions and getting out there. So that was always interesting. But I mean, not too much more to say. I mean, the both. I mean, certainly from a medium standpoint, you try to make the very most of this, and like you see stuff like what Eddie Gossage does all the time at Texas. Certainly, having the race right after Martinsville is fantastic for him, because Martinsville, has become the new August Bristol race with the new format and everything, and trying to get into the round of 4. So you're pretty much guaranteed to have some kind of fight or some kind of last minute battle between a couple of guys that are big time championship contenders trying to win a race, and you can really play that up from the next round. It's interesting because then sometimes that gets played up, and then when the race actually happens, you don't really see anything happening. I know there was a lot of attention when Mcdowell was getting the lucky dog, or he and Suarez were battling for it. It seemed like they were racing that pretty clean, but then both of them were having issues at the same time. I mean, Suarez's car shut down. He was trying to keep the car cool. It conked out on the dog leg there, and they had to push him back. And then McDowell, of course, throttle hung, put the thing in the wall. His teammate ended up running him over and damaging his car too. David Reagan did. And ultimately, both incidents not having anything to do with either of them, and then both of them not really being factors in the finish. So as to what happens going forward and at Fontana, well, I mean, Suarez is really good, pretty good at Fontana. I mean, if memory serves, he was right up there in that Xfinity race where everybody's tire was going down. And actually, that brings up another topic from today, tire issues. But the tire issues at Fontana that one time were just insane. Like what, Kyle's blue, and then Suarez is blue, and then they were trying to pull side by side, and somebody else comes up there. A crazy set of circumstances. But it's very different. It's very different how that all works out. And I think, and a lot of the people that have been writing about the Daniel Suarez and Michael McDowell thing, it's interesting to me that so much of it is focused just on Suarez, because okay, yes, he's driving the more top flight ride. He's driving a Stewart-Haas car that's a proven winner. Kurt Busch helped develop that program from the time that he signed on with Stewart. Gotta stay hydrated there. And a proven winner, and bringing on new sponsors and everything that are, the partnerships there with the 41 team, and saying, okay, well, he's under a lot of pressure because he lost his ride at Gibbs. Martin Truex moved into there, and then Suarez has to prove himself all over again. And there's not too many other top flight teams that would hire you past this. I mean, you got Gibbs and Stewart-Haas are right up there. Penske is right up there, certainly this year. People talking about them winning, half of the last 16 races that have been run. And then Hendrick is almost in the position of playing catch-up here a little bit, although they had a good showing in Phoenix in general with Jimmy Johnson and well, not with Bowman. He had problems there, but William Byron seemed like he was having a good run there. But I would say that McDowell's season really has to be put in the same context. I mean, McDowell really, if you think about it, this is a guy that very much is in the same position, almost similar position that Matt DiBenedetto this year. That Michael had been driving start and park cars for years. He was driving for Phil Parsons Racing, Prism Motorsports in its previous incarnation. After the economy went sour, and his surefire ride at Michael Waltrip Racing ended up kind of going sideways there, and then developing his, just staying in it with the Levine team and getting the team up to the level where a guy like DiBenedetto could come in and with the Toyota support and really make something happen there. McDowell then going to Front Row Motorsports, that is not a top flight team, but is a team that has won races. I mean, David Reagan. And that 34 car in particular seems to have the horseshoe that 38 doesn't seem to have, which is really bizarre. 38's come close a couple times with David Gilliland, but The 34 is really the flagship entry. So landing that one, I mean, it's unfortunate for Landon Castle because he's such a popular driver and a good kid and everything, and a lot of much like the Benedetto has a very strong internet fan base there. But Mcdowell, in his time with the 34, he has had some very good runs in practice and qualifying. It seems like a lot of the last car articles I write about him, it almost invariably starts with him having a good like top 20 or top 15 run in practice or qualifying, having a really good piece. This happened in Atlanta. Didn't so much happen here at Phoenix. I mean, the chicanery that was going on where they were trying to get everybody out there at the last second to get the stage right off the track and all that, that was a whole different deal. But certainly in Atlanta this year and in Las Vegas last year, and then in between that, of course, his great top 5 run at Daytona. Say what you will about him not helping Joey Logano out or anything. You know, he's just trying to find whatever line moves. He's really been making stuff happen over there. We talked about earlier about some of the Xfinity Series teams that are really taken off this year, and McDowell very much trying to do the same thing on the Cup Series side. I think that was the reason that clash was as explosive as was, even though both those drivers seem like they're very calm in general. Although Daniel Suarez coming out and saying that apparently he got in a lot of fights when he was younger. That was a little surprising to me, I thought. But McDowell, I would say, is just as hungry as Suarez in that sense, if not hungrier, because he's now in a team that's still not an elite ride, but he's had experience with that now himself. I mean, winning the Road America race with Richard Childress for sure was a huge breakthrough for him, and having a lot of runs with Joe Gibbs before that, where he'd come close to pulling through. A very different deal that way. But it's interesting, the dynamics of that. But I think McDowell's part, is the one, which can't really be overlooked. And I don't know how much of that I'm going to put into the Cup article for this week if McDowell turns out to be the deal there. But yeah. Starting the fight was kind of ridiculous. It did seem like he instigated it. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't tell what Suarez was saying when he came over the wall and was just kind of walking up to him. Maybe he was just, he was just putting his hands up or something. But it did seem like he was leaning in to push him back, and that just set Suarez up, and he kind of did a leg sweep or something like that to get him there. It turned into something pretty wild. So, but again, everybody always talks about rivalries. They talk about controversy. They talk about just seeing more personality out of these guys. I mean, you think back to Jeff Gordon versus Jeff Burton at Texas, 9 years ago? Like 2010? I think they still had splitters on the cars back then, or the splitter brackets on the cars back then. They still have splitters now. But, the tangle that happened there between, Gordon and Burton, and just seeing that look in Gordon's eyes when he's walking up to him, and just like, yeah, some whole different thing happened there. It happens every once in a while. It's not nearly as common as a lot of these montages and stuff would have you to believe. But it's we'll see what happens going forward. I'm not counting on that actually carrying over for another week, but maybe it'll be something new. It seemed like just last week we were talking about Ricky Stenhouse. I thought he was the big controversy this year between the wrecks that happened in Daytona and holding up Martin Truex in Atlanta. That seemed to be the big story, but it seems like that's how quickly things change. Then suddenly this happens over here, and everybody moves the cameras that way, and suddenly you're not looking over here anymore. So, I don't even remember what Stenhouse did in the race today. Where did he finish, actually? He's 13th. I mean, not a bad run. Well, good run for him there. I mean, again, it's quietly solid start to the season. Got to talk about Ryan Newman also, looking at the results here. 6th for most of the race, hanging on there in the Oscar Mayer car. Drove the Wienermobile around the track and did just as well with the Roush Fenway car. This is the same team that, of course, Matt Kenseth was helping out last year, and Kenseth had, I believe, his best run of the year last year at Phoenix, running that car. I don't know if it was the same car or not. Of course, with the Mustang, it's going to be cosmetically different from that, even if it were. But we'll see what happens. One fight a year. Yeah, that's pretty much about the going rate. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens from there. Looking ahead to Fontana. Fontana is a track I really liked. We just did a day trip there last year, and that was the first time coming by. Thanks for coming by, brother Flander. And got seeing the action of the track there. It's a venue that I don't feel gets the coverage that it really deserves. It's another one where, much like Phoenix, you can fan out and you can actually have like some pretty competitive side-by-side racing. And the surface, though, is so rough now because you keep in mind, we talk about Atlanta like it's the surface of the moon, but Fontana's surface is just as old. And we're talking back in 1997, and much wider and a different climate and different things that are happening and everything. Of course, we talk about the weepers, we talk about the seams, we talk about it's a nightmare when it rains. It's like a sieve, but when it's sunny out, I think it puts on a pretty good show. I think that what happened with Kevin Harvick last year and the team, we talk about Brad Keselowski trying to get the car back out there today. Let's talk about Kevin Harvick trying to get the car out from just wrecking, just absolutely eating the backstretch wall after that tangle with Kyle Larson. That was a huge accomplishment by that team to just piece that thing back together with tape and even accomplish minimum speed and even gain a couple of spots. I mean, he didn't finish last in that race, and I thought for sure he would. I thought that was going to be the day that he was going to finish last for the first time. Turned out it didn't happen. It ended up happening in Charlotte later that year. We got around Jeffrey Earnhardt in what was ultimately, I believe, his last start in the 00 before moving on to different teams from there. And of course, that's where Landon Castle has now found himself. So I'll be interested to see what happens there, and then what combination of the aero package is going to be run there. Whether it's, I would assume it's the Vegas package, especially if the 66 is going to run out there. Probably if they're bringing the same car, it's going to have the deals out there. Oh, we got turkeys running outside there. They're always the craziest. We have surprising wildlife up here. That's always the thing. You'll hear them like hop up on the roof here a little bit too. Probably hear that in the background on the camera. Oh, there they go again. They're coming closer. You got a swarm of them, or whatever that would be the term. It's like a coven or like a clutch. I don't know, something like that. Gobble. It's not November yet, so they're getting their daily walk in. Let's see what the time is here as we wait for the inspection results. Oh, we're getting pretty close here. All right, so we are about an hour and 8 minutes into the delay from the race, or the finish of the race. So within the next half hour or thereabouts, we should be having results from this. So I'm going to pull up Pockrass's account here, because that seems to be, at least in the past weeks here, he seems to be one of the first ones to get that. Oh, nope, that was inspection from earlier. Pre-race inspection showing no issues. And 19 winners in a season in 2001. Man, that was the time. When you get like Robbie Gordon winning his first race and Ricky Craven win his first race. 2001. Of course, you can't talk about that season without talking about the greatest tragedy in NASCAR with Dale Earnhardt's passing, and then the greatest tragedy in recent national memory with September 11th. But in the season itself, in between, it was a great pastime that you had. First time winners with Kevin Harvick and Elliott Sadler and Robbie Gordon and Ricky Craven. Just those four by themselves had such drastically different stories. And then Michael Waltrip, of course, on top of that. It seemed to kind of bubble over for some of these competitors that had constantly been knocking on the door to victory lane and not seeing, and then finally breaking through. Will we see that this year? That would be something. It'd be great to get, a guy like Michael Mcdowell or Daniel Suarez, for example. Or, I really thought Daniel Hemrick was going to have something going on at Las Vegas there. It turned out he didn't. He had a great run in practice and great run in qualifying. He seemed to parlay the right strategy into the new aero package, but didn't quite work out for the race itself. Certainly with the lack of cautions, perhaps that was the biggest issue. Couldn't keep up with the adjustments. But we'll see what happens here. Let's see. I'm open to any questions you guys have of anything that's going on here. I know we're kind of running the gambit here. It's a little different when we have just the Xfinity and the Cup Series. Making the adjustment here. The Truck Series, of course, coming back at Martinsville at the end of the month as we start the short track portion of the season, or at least the first short track of the season. Not seeing any announcements yet on the inspection results. I was thinking about the winners in 2001, as that was a tweet from Pockrass talking about the most different winners in a season. Responding to that, at least in the modern era, when you had you didn't have 50 and 60 races a year and dual races on Wednesdays or something like that, or whatever it looks like they're trying to plan for for 2020 and beyond. That's going to be really interesting. If it's more articles, I mean, that's kind of the advantage of the way we cover this stuff on the website here. I mean, if it's a race, there's going to be a last place finisher. We'll find some kind of way to make it work. But it'll be interesting. Let's see. Yeah, Andrew, you bring up a good point about Sears Point on being the on the West Coast swing. I think that's a great idea. Growing up, first time I went out to Sears Point was in beginning of June, and in most of my memory, it seems like June is always the time to kind of get ready to go out there. But of course, you see this in the broadcast. It gets very dry out there. The grass gets dried out. It's kind of like Riverside more than Sears Point. But if you watch classic races from a bit further back, about like the what was it? I would say, what was it? 93 through 97, I would say thereabouts, maybe 93 through 96. It looks like almost a completely different place. And actually, the Sonoma Raceway did a tweet about this a while back when we've had all these heavy rains come through here, like everybody's been having here in the country, but showing just how green it looks and how nice it looks. It's lush. I mean, when it grows up, it looks very different, and it looks very very iconic. And certainly with bringing the carousel back, that'd be kind of a nice thing to kind of throw back to. It would be running the carousel, but still running the race in June. I mean, the race is of course going to be when it is. They haven't moved the date. That's going to look different because I don't know what that's going to look like. I assume it's just going to be just bleached out or anything. But with all the rain we've been having, maybe that'll carry over a bit more and it'll look better. Last year was unseasonably hot, especially during the Saturday race. That was a big issue. I felt that was really something that was keeping a lot of people away, which is too bad. Because the road course races, I mean, of course, are trying to really take off and excuse me. And doing the Roval and everything like that. Official water bottle with my Corey LaJoie BK Racing sticker on it. Maybe if things happen and they're changing the schedule around, yeah, I mean, I'd be perfectly willing to go to a race that's over in Sonoma right now. I think that would be really nice. I mean, we had just today. We had some pretty steady rain out there during the race. Just watching it today, but it's cleared up and it's pretty nice out there right now. So, I mean, doing a race out here, and of course, rain's not really an issue for a road course, so you can have rain tires out there. I mean, Sears Point, as compared to Watkins Glen, is almost like sitting on Watkins Glen and just kind of crushing it all together, because the configuration may be actually slightly longer than Watkins Glen if you use the carousel. Like if we're talking 2.45 miles versus 2.52 miles, but everything is so much tighter together, and it's splashed against the side of a hill, whereas Watkins Glen is really stretched and really long, and it's just kind of draped like a quilt over this farmland out there. I mean, Watkins Glen is fascinating, but I mean, it's really, you can see why the speeds at Watkins Glen are so much higher, because it's a drag strip and then the tightest corner you can think of, and then a drag strip and then a really tight corner and then a drag strip and then that. And they're all different lengths, but everybody's just daring each other to go just as fast as they can into those. And thank goodness they added the chicane there on the backstretch, because that was the most insane one of all. You mentioned Beast of Metal. You mentioned the video that Black Flags Matter did. That was really cool. I thought it's nice to see again, so many people interested in JD's story and what happened in 1991, and really trying to put that into the best terms possible. He offered me to be a part of his video. I wasn't sure what angle I should take, if I should work a script out with him or anything, but we talked about the doing just kind of random thoughts on it. I mean, and that was really kind of what I did. I just kind of took my voice recorder out. I mean, the pop filter didn't work very well, so it kind of pops a little bit on the audio. But I really wanted to kind of just it's something that I've been chewing over, especially in trying to promote the book, and even to people that aren't really into the sport, and just putting that in the perspective of wanting to be an athlete, like wanting to be an elite athlete, and the steps that you have to take, and not just honing your skills and showing that you're good enough to be there, but literally the ability to go from just being somebody that just does it for a hobby or just does it for fun, and getting into the national mainstream. Again, I mentioned this earlier with some of the other small teams. That's the difference in stock car racing that I like, is that you can get some guys together, you can get some cars together and piece them together, and then go out there, and as long as it passes inspection and everything, and as long as you qualify for the race, then you go ahead and do it. And you got to get your NASCAR license and stuff like that. But there's administrative steps and everything. But it's not as many obstacles as, say, if you want to play for the NFL or something like that. So there's always that, and JD is very much emblematic of that. I think that's the easiest way to explain who JD was and what an independent driver is to somebody that maybe doesn't have really that much of an interest in the sport, but some passing interest in it that way. The 94 Speed Weeks video, yeah, that was really interesting there too. I thought NASCAR Man's videos have really taken off in recent years. He seems like he improves an aspect of it each time that he makes them. And I know he typically uses title cards instead of narrations, but it seems like he's really trying something different with that. And I'm honored to be doing the narrations for his videos. It makes my job a lot easier, because sometimes doing the starting grids, you mentioned that, Andrew, about doing the starting grids on a weekly basis. Sometimes one of the things that takes the most time is just getting the script and make sure I have like the nickname of the driver, a statistic, and then try to get the statistic so it's actually correct. And so I'm not actually not just saying something that's incorrect, because then it's defeating the purpose of what the video is supposed to be. It's supposed to be informing people in the most concise way possible, and keeping people up to speed on that. Doing the starting grids full time, I mean, again, that's something, I've flirted with that in the past and thought about, again, when I was thinking about doing this year, in terms of, again, being more accessible and doing more stuff with LASCAR and trying to grow that brand a bit and get it to where it needs to be. That's something that I looked at, but again, it's the time commitment that's a big issue with that. And nowadays, with the new qualifying format, it makes it very difficult. It's difficult to stay engaged with stories from qualifying now, because it happens so quickly. You can't track what's happening. You can just look at one part of the field, and if you're not looking at the right spot, you can miss something completely. Maybe if somebody bumps in at the last second or something like that. And these new aero packages aren't helping that either, because now it's happening even quicker, because nobody wants to run until the end of a session. But then beyond that, I mean, to do it the way that I like to do it, especially from the ones like about 2010, 2011, I feel were some of the best grids that I had on those, where it would show the driver, it would show the car, it would show the name, it would show the qualifying speed, put the leaderboard thing in the middle, so you have different ways to represent the data. And again, and do it in HD, do it with videos woven into it. It takes a tremendous amount of time. And back in doing those, I mean, I was asked to estimate kind of how long it would take to make them from somebody else. And, there were times where like a qualifying session would end at 2 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock. I'd be up well past midnight, still finishing the thing, like just that same day. Like it would take like that much time, and that's continuous time there. And you can't always count on having that much time, which is unfortunate. I never say never on that. I mean, again, I still like doing the Daytona 500 grids, and I'm still planning on doing that. And again, I still want to promote the Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/lastcaronbrock, the starting grids actually is one of the first, is actually the only goal I have on the website right now. If I reach the first goal that I have, first monthly goal on that website there, I'm going to do another starting grid this year, and I'll expand it by saying, like, it could be a cup grid, it could be Xfinity, it could be trucks, and then any Patreon members in there will be able to have a vote into what race that's going to be. And hopefully we'll get some more members by the time we reach that threshold, so we get enough votes that it could be something that most people are going to be happy with. Right now we just have a few members. I'm thankful to all of you for being members in there, those of you that have signed up. And if you're considering it, definitely take another look at it, because I've changed the tiers a bit. So I think the way I set it up originally in January was a little over ambitious. I've changed it up so if you're at the $5, $10, or $25 level, you're gonna get some swag. So I'm gonna hook you up. So the $5 one is the bumper sticker, the $10 one is the loose die cast with the statistic with it, and $25 one is the T-shirt. And the shirt and the sticker, all that stuff is not available to other people and everything. They're different from like the Last Car shirts, like the one you see over my shoulder here, and things like that. But just check out the website on that. And who knows? Again, if that takes off, we'll start with the next grid from there, and then we'll always see what happens. But I still have all the equipment there. I mean, as you can see, I got the microphone behind me here next to my creepy monkey in the lake picture behind me. There it is, right there. But yeah. Hey, Big Rybone 24. See, WWE is on. I don't watch too much wrestling, although I did like M. Blemon's video where he talked about why it's as popular as it is. His Never Ever series, again, I mentioned this in another video a while back. I mean, his one on Dale Earnhardt was fantastic, and I did a video on the Patreon on that actually, and also but in wrestling, it's kind of you get some interesting stories in there, interesting personalities. That's definitely a good video. I would recommend checking out. Again, the Never Ever series by Amp Lemon. Let me take another look here. Still getting notifications on here. Doot. Nothing new. Nope, still not hearing anything on the inspection process. Let's see what time we are up to here. We are now down to the last 8 minutes in regulation as we await qualifying results here. Attending Auto Club Speedway, man, I wish, but the NASCAR Fan 2041, thank you for your support of my my website and everything. Good to have you on board here over in the chat. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be at the Auto Club Speedway. That was one race that I was looking at, especially from last year. We really enjoyed. I was mentioning this earlier in the video here. Really enjoyed just coming out there for the Sunday show. Things with the move and stuff have just kind of been really busy, and we're going to try something a little different. Probably the first race that I'm going to be covering this year is going to be at the Sonoma Raceway. And again, more information on that, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock. We'll have some more details on that in the coming weeks. A big thing I'm shooting for, the big one I'd like to be able to do is doing both Phoenix and Texas and Phoenix in that order in November. I think that would be really cool. Plan is to travel down to Texas and then drive from Texas to Phoenix to do some of the last couple of races there. And you're doing the Cup race at Sonoma. Excellent. Good choice. Good choice. Who do you have right now contending for the Cup title? Seeing from Domindu's comment there. I'm really impressed. Again, I mentioned this pretty early. I'm really impressed with Kurt Busch right now. I think he's really lying in the weeds. He seems to really have a strong start this year, and I know that a lot's been said about the Penske teams and certainly Kyle Busch now, and for good reason. They deserve to be up there. But at the end of the day, that's 4 people, and you can have. Is that going to be the championship 4, or somebody else going to squeeze in there? Kurt could be that X factor that just kind of rolls through, like a Ryan Newman a few years ago, or Joey Logano against the big 3. Suarez and Harvick, certainly a possibility. Can't rule them out, especially Harvick. Suarez, we'll see what happens. He's got to get in the top 16 first. I didn't see the point standings yet, but I imagine with the difficulties he was having during the race, that probably didn't help the efforts, at least in the short term. Excuse me. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. It's always certainly a possibility. But we're looking at later on this year, looking at the Sonoma Raceway. We're also looking at Mo Sport in August. I'd like to meet up with Robert Taylor, the motorsports artist that's up there. We hung out with him very briefly during our Watkins Glen trip, and I wanted to spend more time up there. And I think that that event would be a really cool one to do. Also doing the Truck Series and the NASCAR Pinty Series, working a little bit of a different pace. Yeah, I see your comment there, Domindu. Yeah, you're going to Sears Point in June. That's excellent. Great venue to go to and check it out. Daylight savings. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. Like I say, I work night shift, so it's a little bit of a different experience there. Seeing the time go forward on its own, but it's I gotta say I'm not a huge fan of it rolling back, but I like it. Springing forward is kind of nice. I mean, it's you get a little bit more daylight there, and it shows that things are on the ascendancy. And again, always June in general is always a nice time of the year, because that's, again, in my mind, that's synonymous with Sears Point and going to the races out there. So that's always fun. Let's see. Anything else here we got? Not seeing any announcements here. Let's take a look at the Twitter feed in general and find out what else has been going on. Do we have any other fights or anything that's been happening since the race wrapped up? What's everybody think about this whole NASCAR Heat esports like draft or something? They may as well be speaking a whole other language to me, because I'm still in the mind of a Papyrus offline NASCAR 99 kind of thing. Like that's as far as my reach goes. I suppose that's a big thing they're trying to make happen. We'll see what happens there. Just seeing a lot of pictures of Kyle Busch. Hey, what was the deal with that grid walk where they brought Adam Alexander and Jeff Gordon and was it Darrell Waltrip out there? It's like, I mean, it's not enough that they have Michael Waltrip going up there and walking around and dropping tacos in people's cars and tripping over Truex's car, and just overall making it more difficult for other journalists to try to do the same thing, or with a little less spectacle. But when you have three guys and they're all standing there with microphones and they're all interviewing one person, I just can't help but think, can't they just split up? Like, okay, it's cool to like make the most out of your crew, your broadcast crew. I don't want to make this always complaining about the broadcast, but there's so much material there. You can have Adam Alexander at one end, you can have Darrell Waltrip or Michael Waltrip here, and then you can have Jeff Gordon at the other end, and they all just catch up with other people, because you're not gonna the thing with a grid walk that you have to keep in mind, it takes a very long time to get from one end of the grid to the other. You're gonna miss some stuff. I mean, and so if you're trying to do it, you're going to come across like Michael Waltrip. You're going to come. I mean, I like Mikey. I mean, he tends to be wrong on some very strange things, but he's been an important aspect of the sport, and he's been there for some critical moments in the sport, and that's not worth nothing, And then he's been in the broadcast booth a long time, but you're not going to be able to just sprint from one end to the other. I mean, there's a lot of times where I go to the back of the field there, and I get maybe 6 or 7 cars up, and that's pretty much it. The crowds are usually so dense, and you figure if you're like a TV announcer, you got a guy with a camera, big camera equipment, and not just a camera, but then there's like a guy that has like a Lord of the Rings staff with a big TV screen on it. It's ridiculous, but that's the way that it's all set up. And then you got Mikey with his little GoPro on his hat and everything like that. It's just not practical, but it's I don't know. It seems like there's a better option. I like an option that uses things like that spreads people out a little bit more, like not clustering them all together. I don't know why everybody's pretending like putting reporters out on different spots of a road course is like a revolutionary thing. It used to be back even in JD's time, they would put Ned Jarrett in turn 5, they put Benny Parsons in turn 1, they put Bob Jenkins in the booth, and then you had the pit reporters. And if something happened, I mean, they certainly didn't want anything like that to happen, but if anything happened, they were going to catch it, and they did. Um, and it's cool that they're doing it back at Watkins Glen now, and Dale Jr. and then the gentleman from MRN Radio and the others doing it there. But it's it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, sorry I can't make it out there, NASCAR fan 2041. Hopefully I'll be maybe next year. We'll see, but it depends on what the schedule is and a couple other factors we're going to look ahead on. But any tips or things to know about beforehand? Let's see. It's most of the attractions, at least when I was there, are right behind the main grandstands. It's a very hello. That's the end of the 90-minute mark. So any minute now, we should be expecting some results from inspection. But let me continue to answer your question here. Most of the attractions for the fans and everything are going to be like right behind the main grandstand, so it's pretty accessible there. It can be pretty large. What the track is located just off the freeway, and it's almost like going to like a football stadium or like a baseball stadium. It's almost like it's a very large parking lot. There's a lot of Southern California is like that. It's a lot of parking lots, but a great place if you want to tailgate or something like that. You can tailgate really close to the entrance to the track, and that's really the best place to do it. The infield seems mostly for more like campers and stuff like that. So if you're doing that, that would be the way to go there. But I was very pleased with the local law enforcement and how they were able to get people in and out of the track really easily. Whether you're getting there early or you're leaving there early or something like that, they close down the right lanes to actually get you out of there pretty quick. Make as much time as you can to go down there and see everything that's there. I don't know if you picked up your tickets already, but I do know another thing that's really cool with the Auto Club Speedway. If you're a AAA member, since the Auto Club sponsors the track as well as the event, they have a nice section of seats for AAA members. That's at the very far end. It's like the furthest into turn 4 or into turn 1 that you can go. And there's like a row, I think it's like 2 rows of seats from like bottom to top. And they have those just for AAA members. And they're great seats. My brother and I sat there last year and you got a really good view of it. We were pretty much towards the top and you could see a lot of the track from there. Again, like a lot of tracks there, definitely, recommend a scanner of some kind to check out because you're going to get some long green flag runs even with the stages. And you want to figure out what's been happening there. Fuel strategy turned out to really be a big player in last year's race between Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. And it was interesting to follow what was the money stop and recognizing it when it happened. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, with Kevin Harvick having his issue after he wrecked. But in general, though, just have a great time. I mean, it's a good track. I think there's not really. I would sit if you haven't got your seats yet, I would sit up about as high as you can. That's pretty much a rule of thumb, it seems, for a lot of tracks. But particularly there, from the AAA seats in particular, we can pretty much see the whole track, except for, when you're in the entrance of turn 1, the cars disappear a little bit in turns 3 and 4 because the groove there, a lot of times you're entering it really low and then kind of washing high at the exit, so they would disappear a little bit. That ended up being the spot where Trevor Bayne had his accident that ultimately locked up the last place finish battle in that event. But that was a different deal there. But the infield, there's not really much to see there, unless you. Although I take that back. There, the infield is massive, and 90% of it is just haulers, or is just the campers and everything, and that's pretty much what you'd expect at most tracks. But then towards the front edge of it there, the garage area is really accessible. The cars are all kind of quarantined off to, on race morning, they're all going to be like right towards the exit of pit road. And pit road at Fontana is really long. That was really surprising too. Much like Watkins Glen, the length of pit road, you don't really understand like how long it is and how big the track is unless you're actually there. So you'll be able to take in the scale of the place pretty quick. But it's again, we just did it as a day trip, and we were able to really hit, all the major spots without, really having to obsess about a plan or anything like that. So, yeah, I would just enjoy yourself, and if you it is large enough that if you want to do something, it's best to just do it while you're there rather than try to double back because depending on how much time you give yourself, if you're there for the whole weekend, that's one thing, but if you're there for a day trip, you'll know to take a different approach. But yeah, it's a really good track. It's a really good track. I enjoyed it, and I want to go back there sometime. And yeah, if this ends up being the first of many trips for you, I'll let you know when I'm there next time, and we'll meet up for sure. But yeah, I hope you have a good time for sure. So and we'll see what happens in the race too. I'm anxious to see how the aero package works there. Maybe they'll be more suited to. We're going to get a little bit of elements of both Las Vegas and Atlanta with again the surface versus the smoothness and the width of the track there. So that'll be interesting. Let's take another look here. Not seeing anything on here. Still seeing more comments on my KFC commercial complaint there earlier. Track plays Rocky theme when introducing Daniel Suarez and Michael Mcdowell. Nice. Okay. We'll see. Again, is these track promoters, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Still no word on inspection results at the moment. Yep. I'm not seeing anything either, Anthony. So we'll keep waiting until we get something here. Let's see. I'm going to take some more look here. Take some more looks at what's going on. Here, let me do this in the meantime. I'm going to go ahead and post. Is the Xfinity article pretty much ready? I believe it is. Let me give it another look over here, and then I'll post that. And then we'll get the Cup article finished later this evening, and we'll reset that. Here we go. All right, let's just post this now. I think that's good. One thing that's really cool with Bailey Curry, he's one of those guys. Tommy Joe Martins is another guy like this too, where they actually provide a lot of great insider information on how the team's going and things that happen along the way. Curry's Twitter feed is always has some interesting stuff on it. So I've just posted the Xfinity Series article to the Last Car page. I'll post the direct link in the chat here so you can check it out here in the meantime. And there it is. So we got that there. Yeah. See, this is the interesting thing too. Yeah, Andrew Hayes just waiting to see if somebody gets disqualified this year. I mean, again, just like the last car thing, we don't want like anybody in particular to be disqualified or anything. But this is something that, I mean, again, I'm very much in a holding pattern here on this. I have the beginnings of a McDowell article already written, but there's a great video that was produced after Tom Brady's comeback against the Atlanta Falcons in the Super Bowl, where people were starting to write articles about the Falcons winning and just absolutely dominating the Patriots, and then where they stopped writing it and had to just start over. That's pretty much what the experience is going to be like. Although there's, I mean, the obviously the portion of the article where it's about the way that the last place exchanges during the race is always going to pretty much be about the same. But yeah, I'd be interested to see where the first one's going to happen. I don't know if I would think that one of these downforce tracks would probably be the most likely candidate. Maybe not here at Phoenix, but maybe Fontana would be one, or something like that, or maybe if we get to the more prestigious events like the Coca-Cola 600 or Indianapolis, I figure those would probably be pretty big too. I don't imagine it's going to be an issue like at the road courses or anything, but yeah, who knows? Yeah, see Logano or Boyer, Chase Elliott. I guess that's really the question too. Is like, who is going to be the first person to get disqualified, and is that person going to be the only person disqualified in that race? Because of course, from what I understand from the rules, if more than one driver is disqualified, then they rank them in accordance of their original finishing position. So for example, if you know, Bailey Curry gets disqualified and Joey Logano gets disqualified, well, Curry ranked below Logano, so Curry would get the last place finisher. Okay, we're seeing that inspection is clear, Anthony. Okay, let's take another look here. I'll take a look at that. Let me refresh the page. Looks like we may have a call. Yep, there it is. 26 seconds ago. We have a call, ladies and gentlemen. All clear in post-race Cup Tech. Kyle Busch is the winner. His car had one lug nut loose, which is a fine, but he is not disqualified. So the disqualification wait extends through the first 4 races, almost through the West Coast swing. Will it continue into Fontana, or will we get Kyle Busch's 200th, you know, kind of win? Well, that's going to be something that's going to be the story next week. So that's the story for this week. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for supporting myself and the Last Car on Brock. Again, if you're interested in a copy of my book, JD: The Life and Death of a Forgotten NASCAR Legend, I have these copies in stock here, ready to be signed. You can also get it on Amazon if you prefer. Also, go to the website lastcar.info and the Patreon at patreon.com/lastcaronbrock for more information. In the meantime, enjoy your week. Come back next week after the Fontana race. We'll do the next disqualification show, and we'll see if something different happens at the back of the pack. So thank you again for listening, everyone, and I will see you next week.